Hey everyone, welcome back to the Space Podcast. I'm your host, Max Young. On this show, we dive deep into thoughtful conversations with creative minds from across the industry, sharing insights, stories, and the spark behind their work. Today I'm joined by Valentin. Originally from Vienna, Austria, Valentin discovered his passion for videography early on, which deepened after he moved to New York for work. As he became increasingly fascinated by the YouTube creator landscape, he eventually returned to Vienna to build the Orbit for Creator podcast, where he talks with YouTubers how to become a YouTuber. In this episode, we chat about why he chose to leave traditional media and pursue a career on YouTube, a deep dive into his podcast production system, from reaching out to guests to ensuring an engaging conversation every single time, and his biggest takeaways for creating content he learned this year.
Podcasting is a relationship making machine, and it gives me an excuse to ask very in-depth questions.
Enjoy the chat. Thank you so much, man, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming to Vienna, man. You are here at the best time and the worst time because it's winter and it's freaking gray every day.
Yeah.
But you have Christmas markets.
That's true. I mean, I've been to, I think, like 4 or 5 of them yesterday, and they were already packed, and it was just Wednesday.
Yeah.
Let's get right into it. So you've done a lot of different things. You talked to many, many people within the creator industry, but also like even before you worked behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can give me like a quick rundown of like what you've been up to, like where you started out, what you've been through, and now what you're currently doing.
The thing is, I grew up with cameras in a time not everybody had cameras. I always knew I was going to go into film, television, something like that. I fell in love with music videos. That's really where it started. I wanted to become a music video director. I was a little bit too late for that to really work out. Just the golden days of MTV was over. I just wanted to make cool stuff, visual cool stuff. That's really always what I wanted to do. And had a little stint here in Vienna in television production. It's a very high stress environment for things that are immediately forgotten. Yeah. Because it's just like every day sharing it out and tomorrow next program. And it's like, okay, whatever. And that realization made me rethink what I'm doing and looking into like filmmaking, music videos, that sort of thing. And that brought me to New York for a 8-week workshop of becoming a filmmaker. It's like, that sounds good, sounds fun, sounds like a nice change. After those 8 weeks, there was a new program that opened up, the cinematography program. And I was like, that sounds cool. So I took that for a year and ended up staying in New York for 8 years and doing everything there, from no budget student films to high budget commercials and music videos and a few feature films and everything in between.
How was it different to working in Austria before compared to New York then?
In Austria, you had a few generally older people who were really protective about their position and their job. And like, there's just a scarcity of productions, right? And you're carefully picking who gets the jobs that are available. And most people I knew who were quote unquote successful were also kind of assholes because of this attitude of protection. In New York in particular, there's so much work and there's so much good talent that you really can't afford to be an asshole. Because if we're going to spend 12 hours together on set, I better enjoy that time because there's 100 other people who are just as good as you are and are maybe a little bit nicer to work with. It's a much more collaborative environment. At least that's how I experienced it. Much more sharing information. It's like, if you make a mistake, I'm not calling you out. I'm like, hey, did you see this? This is not the way to do it. Here's the proper way to do it. And let's move on. So much more encouraging environment than Austria.
Yeah, I feel like the whole media industry works like that, right? Like whenever you meet nice people, you recommend them either like for the next gig or when you like plan a project, you bring them on because it's always even more like efficient to work with people that you enjoy working with instead of people that are maybe a bit more skilled but are just, as you said, like assholes or like people that can't get the job done because they disturb the whole environment,
It's such a relationship game. And that's something I actually honestly learned way too late. I was in New York when the whole DSLR revolution happened and red cameras were a thing. And like, it seemed to me when I arrived there was so much about the gear that you own that gets you jobs. But in the long run, it's just the relationships that get you more gigs and that get you
definitely
it's like all the big collaborations between Christopher Nolan and Wally Pfister, they like made 7 movies together and like he made his career, right? It's like that comes from having good chemistry between each other.
You're telling me that you were in New York for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of like projects did you do there? Like how was the transition then back to Austria? What was the thought process behind your like filming career?
What I worked on in New York was a little bit of everything, but mostly the independent film scene. Web series was a big thing at the time, a few music videos, commercials. It's a huge variety, right? Whatever was available. But the reason that I wanted to move back to Austria was just I had a few experiences with people who were a few steps ahead of me, a little bit older than me. And I could just see that it doesn't matter how successful you are, what you do, you're always just chasing the next gig. I never met anybody in the film industry who felt like they had it figured out or were settling down or, I don't know, had any kind of happy life. I mean, that's maybe exaggerating it, but like, I grew up in Vienna, which has been named the world's most livable city, I don't know, 10 times over. And I know what quality of life is, and I know what it means to chill a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I just wanted more of that in my life and not just hustle every day. Okay, maybe let's go back home and see how things have changed. And after being gone for 8 years, Vienna has changed a whole lot. And it's changed even more now. Like it's becoming a much more international place, much more open. There's still a very strong Viennese stereotype of, complaining and maybe having opinions about foreigners. But like I have built such a open international community here, multiple friends who we just speak English with each other. It's like always a mix between English and German. That's kind of what brought me back here. And it's just a much nicer home base than New York is. I mean, I was just back in New York in September and I love the energy.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to make a big idea happen, go to New York. Talk to 3 people. You're going to be much closer than you're here, because if you talk to 3 people here, it's like, ja, schau mal. It's like, okay, yeah, let's see. Which is just a polite way of saying like, yeah, you're an idiot. Or like that's never going to work.
Okay.
Coming back to Vienna, I looked for a employment job specifically. I was done with the ups and downs of the freelance life and like the hustle culture. And I was like, I'm just going to find some steady job. And that placed me in a marketing agency, and we did a lot of corporate videos and that sort of thing. That carried me like into the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which was fine and steady, but also incredibly boring. And the people that worked at the agency, I wouldn't want to spend time with them outside of work. And even within work, it was like different worldviews, different approaches. We were working throughout the whole period of like turning this traditional marketing agency into more of a content agency. And at some point, the owner asked me and one other guy if we want to basically take over the agency. Yeah. Because he wanted to get out of the business. Yeah. And for me, that was an immediate and very clear no.
Why?
I had no interest in being the boss of other people and I don't know, having the responsibility and making this my thing, creating content for other people. Because while a lot of people find a lot of joy in it and create really good work in that environment, my most common experience was like, we pitch a project to a client, everything sounds great, and then you get to the final stage of it and the whole idea gets like cut down. It's like, yeah, we liked what you made, but let's make a safe version.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not what we set out to do. It was like, yeah, but like maybe just a few changes here, and the CEO doesn't like the music. Can we change them? And it's like those sort of small frustrations just added up. And I took that opportunity when I realized that this is not my future to just go all in on YouTube, finally give it a shot. And so, yeah, I finally had the time to get into YouTube and play around there a little bit with a few channels in the beginning, by learning about YouTube, by connecting with other creators, by getting very involved with some other larger creator communities. I just saw that there is a need for a different perspective within the creator economy, because all the established podcast formats or educational formats look at what the biggest creators do, how to blow up overnight, how to become super rich being a creator. And like I just kept seeing comments about this, like, yeah, this is cool, but like, what about somebody who's just starting out? What about more diverse voices, right? And so I really took that as a base, really, to see, okay, what is it like to start out as a creator right now? How do you work? You know, is this your main way of making money, or do you do it for fun? And just explore all the different genres there, and like smaller niches, right? People who are just there to share their experience more so than like become the next Mr. Beast or whatever, you know.
Which is really nice, because I feel like, especially when taking a look at the creator economy from the view of like these big corporations, most of the time the only country that comes to mind is the US, right? Where the money is. Here in Europe, there are so many cool people doing cool shit. And it's really interesting to get the behind the scenes look of what they do and how they do it, and even how they started out. Because that's something that I also believe oftentimes is misunderstood, or people can get confused by, because you only see this like polished, uploaded video, right? But there's so much work, so many probably years most of the time behind every single creator before they became the overnight success that they are. Because you worked in New York, more in the like traditional media scene, but also in the traditional Austrian media scene, and you've talked to a bunch of different creators, I believe that you have a very good overview over the whole creator content world. What is your view and your take on the differences where they are at right now?
In traditional media, everything comes with a plan, with a strategy, and generally with a team. And the creator landscape starts with an individual who has an idea and just like, okay, let's put this out and see what happens. And then you have some people now who analyze what that person did and is like, oh, and that's how you become a successful creator, by daily vlogging, right? Or by giving away money, or by making this style of thumbnail, right? They like reverse engineer what somebody did. You still have that core group of creators, individuals who want to express themselves. That is, I think, the basis of the creator economy. But more and more, the social internet is becoming a marketing platform for businesses and for individuals who want to sell something, and traditional media, who finally understood like regular television isn't a distribution channel anymore. We have to be on other platforms.
Yeah.
And so you have whatever, a John Oliver being primarily a YouTube show that also airs on HBO. Everybody is kind of centering around these online platforms, trying to capture everybody's attention with very different mindset and very different motivations. I just find it a really interesting shift at the moment because these worlds collide. And I'm very curious to see how that shakes out, how that changes the platforms. I hate opening the AI box, but it is there. And like, if the platforms themselves say like, hey, we have some tools for you, please use them.
Yeah.
People will use them. And 2 years ago, I knew when I clicked on a video, it was made by a human.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, this year in particular, there was a phase where I clicked on a video and immediately knew this is just generated content. Yes, you tricked my psychology into clicking on this, but that's not what I want. That's my personal struggle right now, trying to train my personal algorithm back to like giving me stuff I actually want to see.
I feel like the curing part of your feed is like one of the most important struggles everybody faces right now. Either you fall under the consumption of just like getting in all the AI slop, which maybe stimulates your brain, but like what's the real value in that?
Yeah.
I think what you pointed out, like when humans do content, there's like more intention in it. Even if it's like rougher, right? Like it's not as polished as maybe an AI would do it. But in that roughness, and that imperfection lies, I believe, connection. Like people connect with with stories, with like imperfection, and you feel something. And this like emotion that you feel is way more valuable, to me at least, than getting entertained by scrolling endlessly on my phone. Traditional media now more and more gets understanding of the tools that these platforms provide to also get onto social media. And I believe also like a few years back, content creators like YouTubers and Instagrammers, and I think now also like TikTokers, they got also a bit more into the traditional media space, like maybe acting as voice actors or performing in like shows or whatnot. So these worlds are definitely colliding.
I think what I notice is that YouTube in particular, that's where I spent most of my time online, has been a relationship platform. I have this parasocial relationship with another creator. When Casey Neistat did his daily vlog, people tuned in because they wanted to know what he's been up to.
Yeah.
Same with Ryan Trahan this summer, his 50 States series. I just wanted to see how his day was.
Yeah.
Right? There's this like kind of a friend's relationship, just keeping up with somebody that's funny, that makes my day a little bit nicer. And I feel like it is turning more into television, where it's just like, oh, it's stuff that is on and that I just lean back and just, I don't know, turn my brain off for an hour or so. And I just hope we can preserve some of this relationship content, because that's what built the creator economy. That's why this whole thing worked in the first place. And I just hope that there will continue to be a space where I can digitally hang out with people I don't actually know, but who I think are cool, right? And that's a big part of Orbit for Creators, creating a space where you can discover those people on the one hand, and also hear a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. Because it is so easy to like see somebody, find a new channel, and it's like, oh wow, they have 100,000 subscribers, 500,000 subscribers, whatever. They get 1 million views on each video, and just feel demotivated or like trying to emulate what they're doing at this point, right? Like, I mean, yes, you can pour a bunch of money into it and start at the biggest stage if you want, right? But that is not where any of these people started. It's just like making small videos, testing out ideas, and like growing over time, and in the process finding your voice and not just like copying what works to make money. Because I see that in particular on LinkedIn right now, where it's just like every post seems to be like written by the same person. I'm sure there's a lot of ChatGPT in there or whatever. The text is engaging, but I don't get a sense of who you are. Or what are you actually trying to tell me? What is your perspective of this? Everything is becoming filtered through this like algorithm lens, through this AI lens. And it's just like, it reminds me of a debate in school where, you know, you had to learn to write by hand, right? And you can't just type on a computer because it doesn't carry the same personality. If you want to write somebody a love letter, you want to write it by hand and not on a computer.
For sure.
And I feel like it's the same now. It's like, if you want to say something meaningful, type it and don't filter it through some online whatever tool.
And I think that also then converts back to content, because yes, there is definitely a time and place where you can use AI to elevate or streamline your process, right?
Yeah.
But for sure, 100%, there are parts of the whole creation process that just gains way more value, but just doing it the old manual way.
100%. It just makes it more relatable, I think. Why should I follow you over somebody else? Why should I be looking forward to your content versus anything else that fills the same time slot, right? That is where the unique perspective comes in.
100% for sure, yeah.
If everything is the same, then it's all replaceable. And that's why we see the followers becoming meaningless.
For sure, like if you don't add your own personality to your content, like your interest or how you speak, maybe like things even like your clothing style, your accent, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
All of these different things compound and add to the content itself, like the topic of what you do, for example. The result is basically your overall like content experience. And because of that content experience being unique that way, it's different to a different person that basically talks about the same topic. But because the execution is completely different, or like the steps in between leading to the like result part, like to the content itself, to the video or to the written LinkedIn post, I feel like that's the key part to standing out. Because I think misconception I feel like a lot of people have, or at least in my personal view, is that standing out always means to be better than somebody. But I don't think that's the case, because at this time, like yesterday, I believe, Spotify Wrapped was like...
I haven't looked at mine yet.
No? But I would guess that your top 5 artists are completely different to like my top artists.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't mean that like either of them are bad, even if the genre, for example, is the same, right? So basically, they are doing the same topic, they talk about the same things, but the execution is completely different.
Yeah.
because they have their own personalities, their own like style to their content, literally. Why don't we just like take that approach and copy and paste it to our own content? Like, why are we starting to make a video or write a LinkedIn post with the mindset of I have to be better than somebody, I have to be unique, I have to stand out? In that sense, why don't we just like say, let's just say it the way I wanted to say it, and maybe people will resonate with that. And if I do that enough, people that don't vibe with my content just don't stick around, which is so great on so many levels, right?
Yeah.
And people who do connect with me will follow me and they will engage with me, and the conversion rate, like if we want to get more technical,
Sure.
will be way better than if I just publish this like voiceless AI slop.
Yeah. I think that is a function of how the social internet has been built, with you put something out there and you get immediate feedback on quote unquote how valuable this was, how engaging was this, how many
You put a
likes did
number
I
to
get?
it, yeah.
Yes, there's always a number to it. I always like to compare it to like pre-internet. You had a few friends and you made a band. Because I feel like everybody made a band at some point. And maybe you played in your local pub and people showed up and it was a good time. And that was probably the whole experience. You expressed yourself. Maybe a few of those bands, became more professional or made an album or whatever, made a mixtape. But that was a fun experience where it was just about trying something out and expressing yourself. And you also got immediate feedback from the people there, from your parents and your friends and a few strangers. But now that it just has been replaced by a faceless digital crowd that double taps on your posts. If it doesn't fit the current trend or what people are interested right now, it just disappears. And it feels like, did I even publish this? And then you go, oh no, I did push publish, but 50 people saw this and nobody liked it. Is there something wrong? Do I have to change my approach? Do I have to be more engaging? Blah, 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 blah. And it starts these, gets your gears spinning into thinking less about the thing that you want to say and get more into how can I make this more engaging, more algorithm friendly. And you have these incredibly visible success stories. Some guy, some girl made a few videos and now she's super rich. Now she made a product. Now she can buy a house. And it all seems so attainable and so easy. And then people start emulating them at the current point rather than looking like, what is their backstory? Because you could look at Casey and be like, oh, he just films himself every day. Oh my gosh, did I see a lot of people who just filmed themselves every day and didn't go anywhere because they didn't tell a story.
Yeah.
They didn't think about...
Specifically, they didn't tell their story. They tried to
Yeah, and they thought just the act of filming and publishing every day is what makes the format great.
Yeah.
But a person like Casey Neistat knows how to inject drama into everyday life. He sees a narrative arc in a lot of things, right? And that is a craft in itself. You have to be crazy enough to just run around with a camera all day and like make your own Truman Show.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to filtering into something that is interesting to people,
Right.
that is engaging to watch and like has some kind of resonance. And I mean, it's a huge bonus to have New York as a backdrop. Let's be honest.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, but definitely I think that iteration is like very important to that process because personally I feel like it's a balance, right? Like it's a balance act of just creating content for the sake of creating, because then you get better at the skill itself, because as you said, like it always looks much nicer on camera of these people that have done it for many, many years. In the edit and post, most of the time, or if you have the time, you can always cut things, edit things, just like make it look good, right? Like make it look seamless.
Yeah.
There's a saying that good design is like you don't see good design, you only see bad design, right? Like if you watch a video, you can immediately tell if it's like maybe it's not super engaging, maybe the person in front of the camera is not that, I don't know, like enthusiastic or well versed in the topic he talks about. On the other hand, like Casey Neistat, you think that he was born with that gift, and that maybe some people, yes, they start out somewhere else and maybe somebody else, but then at the end of the day, the skill itself, like talking to a camera, editing, all of these things are compounded things that you can like learn if you just do it over and over again. On the other hand, though, as you said, if you just create content by emulating things that worked for other people without understanding why it worked for them at that particular time, then you fall in the trap of I just post content for basically no reason at all, just for maybe trying to get rich, right? But like there's no value, like no
Yeah.
core value in it. And so that's why I believe it's a balancing act of, on the one hand, just don't overthink and just create content to learn all the skills that you need to become the overnight success, like the many, many years that you put in of work to get to a skill set where you can then take the ideas and actually execute on them in the same vision that you have in your head.
Yeah.
Because when you start out, you have like these big ideas, but then once you start creating them, they will always like turn out differently than what you've imagined.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you also, through that skill set that you then build, have to have good ideas that are tied to who you are in a sense of your own spin, your own personality, your own like value perspective.
A big part of this is actually taking time to practice, because nobody turns on a camera and talks to it and feels natural. Nobody I ever met. And it is definitely a skill. Like, even if I look back at my own first like videos of where I record myself, I was like, oh my gosh, who is this person? Like, so like stiff and like trying to be engaging, but just completely failing. But like the first YouTube video I ever wanted to make, I think I recorded 3 times and I still didn't publish it. It was just like 5 things I learned on the internet, like something super generic, but like it's a good starting point. I looked back on it and I didn't feel the need to publish it. And I think that's a big part of the culture right now. I mean, it's shifting, but like if you didn't share it with people, did it even happen, right? I went to an event yesterday and I didn't take a single photo and I didn't share it with anybody. And then on the way back, I was like, why did I even go to the event? Should I have yes, I talked with people there. Like I got something out of it from being there. But it's like, but I didn't make it like a PR piece, because it could have been. We can take those moments and just experience them and, don't record everything. And think of moments of just practicing, and nothing you make has to be perfect from the get-go. It's just really hard to do that with how the platforms are built, how the internet has grown.
Definitely. I think that on the one hand, it's really nice to have like a backlog of videos to look back on and see where you started out and then what your journey's been like, right? Like as you said, when you take a look at your old videos, you've spoken completely different in front of the camera than now. And I think that's really nice, because oftentimes when we look in the mirror every single day, we don't notice a change. But then if we make the gap bigger, or like longer, right, you will see something that has changed, and that can give you motivation to continue doing something that you're eager to like get better at. For that reason, it's really nice. And definitely also there are other benefits, like for your PR, for example, just like as a marketing tool for yourself. Why don't we just sometimes enjoy our life without pressing record? There's always like a time and place, and at the end of the day, everybody has to make the decision for themselves. Let's circle back on Orbit though, because I wanted to dive a bit deeper into the whole process.
Ooh.
Basically, I want to go through the different categories of like pre-production, production, post-production. Let's tackle them like one by one. So let's start with pre-production. First of all, like, what's your overall theme? But also then, like, how do you select who you want to speak to? What's that process like? What's like your process?
That has been basically this whole year trying to answer this question for myself and getting more into systems to make this sustainable. What I landed on is that Orbit is really a channel for the independent creator. That means a solo creator or a small team, but an individual who wants to express themselves with a perspective, with a voice. That is who this channel is built around. And the guest selection process is still a little bit like the simplest version that is actually true is I invite people who I want to be friends with. That is actually the most honest version of it, right? Somebody I watch a YouTube channel is like, I would like to pick their brain a little bit. But there's always also a little bit of a strategy part with it, right? And like, I think what it comes down to for next year in particular is really just focusing on creators who have a YouTube channel, because that's the easiest strategic connection for me to also grow my own audience, and have some people who work behind the scenes, because while so far they don't get the most views, those are my most favorite conversations. Talking with people who are not creators, but work with them, work for them. If you talk to a creator, you kind of see the machine, you see the car, and then you talk to a producer and it's like how this thing actually works.
Right.
What is behind all of this? And so I think those are really important.
You see the different gears moving.
Yes.
To make everything happen.
Yes. Yes. And it's something that not a lot of people talk about. And it just gives you a whole new perspective. It made me understand YouTube in a very different way and the mechanics behind it.
So you're basically saying that you want to then like turn this like parasocial, almost friendship into like a real friendship by inviting them over to your podcast, which I think is super fun because I believe in something very similar. I currently just do podcasts because I believe the whole process is just like fun to like talk to people, right?
Yeah.
Like when do you have time to like talk to like-minded people that you maybe even like select on your own to talk to, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, yeah, that can lead into like friendships or that can lead into just like shared interest. But oftentimes it's just really fun to exchange thoughts on different topics. Maybe have like similar views, maybe have like different views, ask how their process is like, because oftentimes it may be different, it may be similar, it may be something that you haven't even thought about, right? How do you then continue? Like, let's say you found a YouTube channel, what's the next step?
Yeah. I mean, besides of reaching out and saying some nice things about them, it is what you said, podcasting, if nothing else, it is a relationship making machine, and it gives me an excuse to ask questions, because you can walk up to somebody and ask them very in-depth questions, but the podcast just gives it a frame where it's just like, and how do you make money? Which is actually a question I don't ask. Maybe that changes in the future, but it's not the focus of the show. But the way I think about it now is not just bring the person on to share their story, their trajectory, but think about ways that what have they figured out that other people can learn from, right? Which kind of problem can they solve for a creator who is a few steps behind them?
Yeah.
That's been a big shift in the last months, is to think beforehand about one central question that the conversation is framed around. That doesn't mean every question is about that one topic. Like, for example, the next video I'm going to publish is around the idea of how do you make very niche topic interesting to a broad audience, right? Yeah. Because you might think, oh, the thing that you're interested in is like, nobody cares about it. But this guy's building model airplanes and he gets 1 million views. Like, you can find an audience, right? And so this is the central question I wanted to answer. And yes, there's some, what's your journey like? How does community play into this? I have sort of an outline. I have a few kind of standard questions, but then the conversation is always guided by their answers, because that's annoyance of mine when I listen to a podcast and the guest says something really interesting and then the host just moves on to the next question. I'm like, this guy just opened the door for you and you walked right past it. And I like, tell me more. Yeah. And so I try to acknowledge these doors, if nothing else. Dig a little bit deeper if there's something interesting to see there.
When you're reaching out to people, tell me specifically, like, where do you reach out? Is it via Instagram? Is it via email? Yeah. Do you try to reach out to their manager if they have a manager, or like to the creator themselves? Is it LinkedIn? Do you have like a template tags? Is it like always individual what you write? How do you try to like meet your schedule?
It's all of the above. The ideal way is YouTube creator has an email on their page. I email this person directly with a templated structure that I insert very specific personalization in there. The first line is always a handwritten, real reason why I want to have them on the show or why I find them interesting. And then comes a template of like, what is Orbit? Who's been on the show before? And I try with my outreach to be very clear very early on. Do you want to come on the podcast? What I absolutely despise if I get emails that say like, oh, I found your channel recently. And then there's like 4 paragraphs of whatever. And then somewhere in between is like what they actually want from me. Bro, thank you, but no. If I don't immediately know what you want from me, I am gonna ignore it. That's the reality of what we live in today. More and more this year, I got guests through LinkedIn. Last year, that was the same story on Instagram. For me, I think the platforms has just shifted. But in those instances, it's just like much shorter version of like, hey, I just saw you because of this. Yeah. Do you want to be on the show? LinkedIn is freaking amazing for that because you have that built-in social proof immediately, more so than you have on Instagram.
Especially like if you post about the podcast
if you post about the podcast, but also you immediately see like if you have common connections. I know that you're a real person.
Yes.
You know, it's really hard to fake a LinkedIn profile. And why would you?
Yeah.
Versus Instagram DM system. Like, it's really easy to lose messages in there.
Yeah.
It's just like there's like 3 different categories now.
Yeah.
I think we all have more than one Instagram account. It's like, where did this person write me? So on LinkedIn, this is much cleaner, much easier.
Do you then try to like link them to a like scheduling page where you can like try to align your schedule, or is it just like, hey, when do you have time?
I make it very clear that the scheduling is dependent on their time. Like this is, I'm trying to be as accommodating as possible.
Right. Like let's not make them work.
Ideally, you would have a pre-conversation before you actually record, because that's when you find out what is the topic going to be.
Oh, okay.
Right? That is like the chit chat out of the way, right? Like you learn a few things that like are not in the YouTube video on the Instagram page, right? So that really helps with structuring what the conversation is going to be about. But that's not always possible.
If the like chit chat is possible prior, what do you talk about? How do you like try to like reach out the important, interesting topics?
I don't. So maybe this is unconventional. In a pre-conversation, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just trying to be present and get to know the person a little bit better.
But like, what do you tell them? Do you tell them like, hey, let's chat before that?
Yeah, you want to have a quick pre-call just to figure out the conversation, just to get to know each other a little bit, to I don't know, feel out the chemistry or whatever. Yeah. Maybe it's because I've had so many calls with creators over the past, 3-4 years, that it's just like second nature to me. But you make me think a little bit more about it. So it's like, it usually starts with a version like, oh, tell me your story, I'll tell you my story. Just like the cliff notes of like how we got here. And then me just asking a few questions about, I don't know, I think it's very dependent on the person, like just trying to pull some threads and see where there's something interesting. What I'm trying to pull out of them is to see their unique perspective. Where can they add something?
Do you also have then a phase of like researching about them, or do you try to get that all out in the prior chat if you have one?
The research is an interesting question because I don't do much research. It also depends very much on what is available. Like I interviewed a DJ last year and she had done a few podcast interviews beforehand. Yeah. That was great research. Just listening to them uncut on other shows and like hearing about her family backstory, where she's actually from. That's not in the YouTube videos, right? Obviously.
And you also know what's already been covered, so you can maybe like different direction.
Yes, exactly. Like, or where's an interesting moment, right? Yeah. So if there is some content like that to watch, I think that's great. With a few people I tried out this year to see what can deep research provide me. Yeah. But honestly, I always ask chat like, tell me about this person. And it gives me like 10 pages of documents. And like, I really end up really looking at it or like finding something in there that is worth talking about. Because it's good at finding like the factual information. Yeah. Person went to school, job, whatever. But it doesn't really surface like the perspective. And that is, I had a researcher on the show recently. What I got from this conversation was really that just like research is not about learning who this person is, but more so like building a deeper connection with them. If there are ways of creating that deeper connection, I will do that, but not everybody has this. And that's where the selection process comes into place, where like, ideally, I've been watching this person for 3 years and I just know them. As much as possible, I'm trying to be a stand-in for the audience. Somebody who watches them and wants to have a conversation with them.
That's a really good perspective, yeah.
Yeah. That is what my job is. Ask the questions that their audience would ask. In some instances, you can go to Reddit and be like, what would you ask X? Yeah. Which can lead to some interesting questions.
Do you then send your topics or your questions to the interviewee prior? Or is it more like you just get on the podcast and you just like riff and figure out the flow of the conversation?
So more and more it is about making the guest aware what the main topic of conversation is.
But so that they don't accidentally derail, or do you like try to...
Just for them to have an idea, right? More so. I mean, that's also in the initial email, usually like what is a channel about? Ideally, the guest watches a few episodes beforehand. I don't think I've ever sent a full questionnaire out because nobody had asked for it. In my time in corporate filmmaking, I saw that often leads to worse answers, where people try to like script answers. Right. Yeah. And it's just like, that's not what we're doing here. Like, yes, if we're doing a corporate piece where CEO has to announce something, yes, sure, you want to have that written out exactly.
Yes.
But if it's a behind the scenes conversation, that's not helpful. Trying to give the guest an idea of what the conversation is going to be about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that if they know like the general topic, they can maybe prepare like some notes on it without sounding too kind of scripted out.
Yeah.
That's also definitely something that I've learned over the years, because like 3 or 4 years ago, I did like a documentary film and I interviewed like 26 people on it.
Wow.
That was like very early on when I kind of started out like doing more filming and like cinematography and stuff like that. So I wasn't fully aware like what is the best process for that, right? Like it's also like oftentimes just like a back and forth, trial and error. And in this case, some of the times I sent them the questions before talking to them, and sometimes I didn't. And it's just as you say, like if they had all the questions and it was like almost like a questionnaire of like things I want to like go through. First of all, they sounded very scripted when they were talking to me.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, which was not that bad because it wasn't like a podcast where with a conversation, it was literally like more like an interview where they were like just talking, and I knew what I can then later on insert in different parts of the documentary. But in general, it was still kind of my mistake that I just went from question to question without like leading them naturally or like transitioning them to the next part.
Yeah, that's the difference between having a conversational podcast and making a documentary.
Yeah.
In a documentary, yes, you can just jump from question to question and the edit will take care of the rest. But like in this case, I want to be a conversation. Yeah. And I think one uniqueness I have by talking with creators, most of them are super excited to finally be able to talk about creator stuff, because that's everything we think about, and we rarely get to talk with somebody who really understands what's going on. And so having somebody there who just listens and like understands all the nonsense we have to deal with, or like all the intricate details of being a YouTube creator, they're just like always super happy. Like I think the most common response after we stopped recording and everyone's like, "Oh, that was so nice. We got to chat about all of this." It's like, hey, nice. So
yeah, but that's also like why I try to like trim down my questions from more and more, and got better and better results. Yeah, just good thing to like give them a rough idea or align with them prior of like what could we talk about roughly, but then just like figure out during the conversation where maybe like golden nuggets are, where we could dive more in depth into. Let us continue about talking about your production, because I would love to understand when you decide to have a chat with somebody in person, when it's online, what tools do you use, how do you ensure lossless quality if like internet problems happen, like it's a big thing, especially like for video podcasts. So
I started out with in person, and that was very important to me. But after the first season, I just noticed how, well, on the one hand, it's a little bit limiting who I have access to. And on the other hand, it is much more resource intensive. Either I travel, they travel, it needs a studio space. And so I played around with some more remote conversations, and that has become the default for me. It just cuts down on the production questions. It's just like I have my online setup, I do it through Riverside, and it's super easy and it generally works. I don't think it ever really failed me. There is a dedicated online tool that allows me to do remote conversations in a decent quality.
Yeah.
A really important aspect of my creator journey has been to unlearn a lot of traditional filmmaking rules and worry less about quality and worry more about the actual content, because for the most part, people didn't care if it was in person and shot in 4K or if I do it remotely and the person is using a webcam. If the conversation is good, and people will watch it. So those are the two modes. And I still do in-person conversations every once in a while if it makes sense. This year, for example, I have friends who own a studio that's like around the corner from where I live. They were just offering me the space. Just saying like, hey, if you need the space, it's available. I had a few people in Vienna, local. And so we just booked one day and recorded like 3 episodes in a day. And that made sense. And all the gear and everything was set up so that we could just sit down and push a button. Because the first season in particular, I traveled all across Europe with my own gear. And boy, I feel like every time something just went wrong, right? The camera stops recording, the mic wasn't plugged in, whatever, you name it, right? And it's just like, it's a heavy bag that you have to lug around and set up, and it just takes a lot of time. Versus here's a calendar link, book your call, I show up 10 minutes early, make sure that my lighting, my setup is good. And then the other person shows up and automatically records. And it's automatically backed up in the cloud.
Yes.
Which is kind of nice.
And it's way more frictionless than...
Yeah, it's just a lot less friction. There's a very different energy when you're in person versus online.
For sure.
Each person is in their own space,
Yeah.
in their own setup. There's no travel time, right? I find it just a more controlled environment.
Speaking about quality, you said that for you, the context or the content itself is what matters most.
Yeah.
And I would mostly agree, because it is the reason why people like click on a video to like get something out of it. But I think we both agree that audio is even more important than video.
Oh, yeah.
So it has to be a certain standard to even like work, right? Are there cases where you ask them to, hey, do you have like any mic that you can like use, or can you like set up a different camera?
Yeah. If I wouldn't be working with creators, I would be doing this a lot more. But because I work with creators, or I interview creators for the most part, it's kind of a given.
Kind of, yeah.
It's just like they have a setup, right? Just saying something like a quiet room, nice lighting, and if you can use something that's not your MacBook camera, that would be nice. I have a friend who has a podcast with scientists, and it's a bit more of a struggle to get them to have a nice setup, right? A mentor of mine booked a video person in the city that the guest was in, and had them drive there and set up like a whole camera lighting situation.
Yeah.
And then he was on his end, right? So it was definitely looking sharp.
Damn. Yeah.
If you have the resources for it, that's great.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. But
there's a budget behind it, yeah.
Yeah, there's a budget behind it. And you have to think about what is your priority. For me, this year has been really about consistency. And so I can let some things slide.
Let's talk about what's your timeline and process and steps to like edit a podcast afterwards.
Yeah.
And how do you manage scheduling or publishing it on different platforms? Do you have any like trailers that you drop to make people like interested to click on then the final video?
Yeah.
Do you write about it? Like,
yeah.
What's that like?
The post-processing is, I think, the most streamlined version of what I have, or the most checklist I have, because it is very repeatable. Drop in the footage. I make a separate like wide shot, because I don't have a wide shot where it's just like a split screen between the two. I do the first pass, just kind of cutting the obvious bits, the front and the tail, and some really obvious gaps where, I don't know, somebody repeats a sentence. Get it into a roughly shape that I can listen to. I have become just ruthless of cutting things, because this goes back to something you said earlier. One core principle of mine that I learned very early on in my filmmaking career was like, you can't be better. There's always somebody going to be better, but you can be different. And that will always be true. And so if everybody else is making hour-long unedited podcasts where you see in the comment sections like, bro, I like it, but can you cut this down? And I'm like, hey, they're right. I don't have the time to listen to a 2-hour podcast. It would take me a week to listen to a 2-hour podcast, or a really lazy Saturday morning of just watching that podcast, right? And so I take an hour-long conversation and cut it down to generally half an hour or so.
Do you oftentimes have like a time frame that you want to stick to, that you say like, my show should roughly be around like 1 hour of recording and then got down to like 30 minutes? Or like, what's
that is
your
roughly
rule of
the
thumb?
idea. Yeah. I mean, a recent conversation was about 45 minutes. The next one's going to be around 22 minutes or so. It depends. Some people are just naturally more expressive.
Right. Yeah.
Some people have more pauses.
Yeah.
It's a conversation, so it depends on the energy in the room. But roughly half an hour, that is easy to get into and have sort of a narrative arc to it, right? I mean, people can go back and analyze the narrative arc of podcasts, but generally speaking, it's more made up than it's actually there. And then I go through it a second time where I think more about the structure, where I label sections, what do we talk about, and start to set some markers of mostly things that could be in the intro or things that could become clips or short form, just to make it easy for me to find. Because if you have an hour-long timeline and trying to find a specific quote, you can do that now with text-based editing, but I find it much faster with markers on the timeline. And then the third pass class is usually the story edit, where it really becomes about shaping the conversation. What are the parts we take out? Is there a part that needs to be placed somewhere else? Something I've done more recently also is do some pickup questions at the end. If I know somebody had an interesting answer, but like it was maybe a little bit too long or we didn't get to it, and it's like, okay, just ask a standalone question and maybe we can place it somewhere else. Ideally, after I have the story edit, I do another full, I watch the whole thing and again, set more markers of what needs to get cut or what needs to get changed and where do we need B-roll or where do we need elements, and then set all of those elements in there. Sometimes I combine the story and the B-roll part, the polishing part, just because of time reasons.
Yeah.
The goal is to have one video out each week on the YouTube channel. That doesn't necessarily have to be a full podcast conversation. I'm a little bit of thinking about that right now, like what does season 4 look like?
Yeah.
Right now, I'm leaning towards one full podcast conversation a month and 2 other videos. That might be a solo video where I talk about, that might be, a clip or something. And then I think what I'm going to try out for the next couple months is take the 4th week off intentionally, because if you are on a weekly publishing schedule, you never actually get the time to review what just happened, and that's where you really learn something. If you don't take time to review, then you're just repeating yourself over and over again, and do some of the admin stuff that never gets done, and making sure there is scheduled time that is not content production.
Right.
That's my goal for the next coming months. It is constantly evolving. I've been producing in seasons, but I've also noticed how much that slowed down the growth of the channel. You see it so clearly, and in analytics, like, oh, there was a period of time where graph goes up, and then I stopped publishing and graph is flat. I was like, it's good for me, for my creative juices, but it's not good for the channel.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out ways to make this easier on myself and like not make 3 or 4 conversations a month. That is a lot of work. If every week you have to edit an hour of podcast, that becomes a lot, and it becomes very repetitive.
How long does it take you though to like edit a full podcast?
I came up with a formula, or with a, rough estimate, that it takes me about 3 times the duration of the timeline to do one edit. To get to a finished episode after it is recorded, it is usually 3 sessions of editing to get it down to a presentable form, and then more polishing. There's so many factors that play into that. How well was the conversation done in the first place? How long is the conversation? How much cleaning up do you have to do?
Right.
Some are faster, some are easier, but
yeah, it definitely plays into the whole process. So do you then like schedule the podcast afterwards? Like, do you use any softwares for that? I know that there are like different tools, different platforms that you can like utilize to make that process easier for you. Or do you do everything manual?
With the YouTube channel, everything is manual. I got now to a place where I have more templates for the thumbnails and the packaging and those kind of things to make that process a little bit easier. But like, I put it on Spotify, I put it on YouTube. For the most part this year, I hit publish right after. I tried to be better about that and have it done the evening before, upload it and schedule it.
Yeah.
That's a huge lesson I learned this year, that like editing and publishing on the same day is really bad for me. Like in terms of like, it feels really exhausting. You work on something and you double, triple check it, and like, you watch a half an hour conversation on double speed and just to make sure that everything is correct, and sometimes you still miss things, and then you hit publish, and then you wait for the validation to come in. That within a window of being awake, it's just tough. And then I go on YouTube and watch something else anyways, right? So it's like it's just not good. Giving myself this boundary of like, edit, upload it, and then publish the next day. I've done it a few times now, and it's night and day difference. Like, it feels so much lighter.
Yeah.
I care so much less all of a sudden about the numbers.
I think that's a really good approach to think about it. Speaking of that was like one of your many points, many lessons that you've learned this year. You just recently like published a list containing your takeaways.
Yeah, 25 lessons I learned in 2025.
Yes, and there are definitely some in them that I want to know more about. Some of them, which I think is fascinating, is the point of, you think about long form as an investment compared to short form being more about marketing.
Yes. Short form content has been a bit of a thorn in my side, in the sense that has been the dominant way that people think about growth on social media. You make short form content. And even when you say you're a content creator, 90% of people think you make videos on TikTok. That is kind of the default response. Yeah. It's just like, no, TikTok is actually the one platform I don't publish on. It is hard to ignore short form content because it can be so powerful. But my main competence is long form editing. That is my native canvas where I can express myself. I know people who really shine in editing short form content. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to. And in a way that actually ties back to the very beginning of television production. Because short form content, for the most part, is you publish it, it has a huge spike, and then nobody watches it again, which then leads to you reposting content over and over again, right? Repurposing content. And it can become a way that people become aware of what you do. Because in particular, long form conversation podcasts are hard to discover and hard to get into. And so like if there is a snippet of like, oh, those are interesting people, I want to know more, then it might make somebody become, subscriber. But on the other hand, the long form YouTube content in particular, it continues to work for you. I really start seeing it now on the Orbit channel, that people are finding a new video and then go back and watch other videos and kind of create their own journey of where they are now, what is interesting to them, because there is a variety now of different journeys of different categories. I recently looked back at some of the channels I started through the pandemic. They're still getting views. I made a video that probably got 1,000 views when I published it. And I haven't looked at that channel in at least a year. And I was curious the other day and I looked at it and it's like, that video has 100,000 views now. Like, when did that happen? And it's just like, oh, for some reason, this video shows up in Google search. It's a good search result for people. I'm like, That's why I think that YouTube long-form videos have just much more staying power. And I do have a playlist with old videos I sometimes go back and watch, which I don't think anybody does it with short-form content.
Long-form videos is more even like an investment of the consumer. Like if you watch a YouTube video, you set time aside to then carefully watch the content.
Yes.
Whereas short-form content is more on the spot. I see something.
Yes.
There's a hook. Because of that hook, because of that intro, it excites me. I want to watch it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big difference why short-form is more a marketing thing to create interest about a person that you then want to like know more about, whereas that leads you then to the long-form videos of that person, which is why I think a lot of creators say that they actually want to be YouTubers. And I think it's not that short form can't be much work, but YouTube is like a different thing, right? Like some of the videos, as you mentioned, are still relevant in a year, because if it's like evergreen and it's searchable, you will fall back to, you can like create your own list, very good for educational content. Maybe there's like some entertaining videos that you want to rewatch every now and then, whereas short form is like more up to date, get people up to speed of where you are at, maybe follow trends, stuff like that. And I think both of them have their own place and time, and sometimes it really much depends on what you enjoy creating more.
Yeah.
One idea you shared, which I found very interesting, was that you believe it is important to share your ideas with a lot of different people before executing on that idea.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is the case? Because my initial response was, there is something interesting in there, but when I talk to more, let's call them like unqualified people, and with that I mean like literally like friends and family, maybe they are not qualified in a sense of judging whether or not this idea is something that you should do.
Yeah. Why I put that in the list? Because I've heard that from many other creators. That is a very common theme from other people. An idea starts by telling other people about it and seeing how they react to it. What you said about talking to unqualified people, that depends really who your audience is. Because if a Cleo Abrams is on stage and says, tell as many people as possible about your idea, so you get feedback, so you can refine the questions that you ask, how you structure the video, that is perfectly fine, because she's trying to reach a broad audience. None of them are scientists or engineers or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a general audience that might be curious about a topic. Talking to your parents about, I'm going to interview this creator, might not be the best sounding board. And then it becomes maybe about reframing how you ask that question. Oh, I'm going to be talking to somebody who builds model aeroplanes on YouTube and makes a living from it and has a pretty good audience. Like, I think my mom would have a question on that. Gets you thinking about how do you package it, who this is for, and that really shapes who you ask and how you ask them.
Taking all your learnings, what are you up to right now? And what do you want to work on more next year? What are your goals?
Where I am now, I feel like after 3 seasons of content, I have a much better understanding of what the show is actually about and who it is for. And so next year is going to be about really doubling down on that and more carefully observe the experiments I make. But I think the overarching theme for all of next year will be investigating this question of, is it still possible to be an independent creator and find success with that? Because so much is shifting.
Yeah.
That's the question that's really been on my mind.
I mean, that sounds super interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing more about that. It was so fun and nice having you in person on the podcast. Thank you for making the space possible today.
Yeah.
For people who want to look up your other learnings from this year and want to listen to your own podcast episodes, interviewing or chatting with creators, where can people find you?
Best place is the YouTube channel, Orbit for Creators. You find pretty much everything there. I will be publishing a video about the 25 lessons that I learned this year. So either there or the newsletter, you can find all of the links on Orbit for Creators.
Nice. Thank you.
Dude, thank you for having me. I ask creators all the time stupid questions, and I rarely get asked these questions back. So it's always nice to have somebody to chat about this. Really good.